Hi, welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 134 for real.
This is Julie. This is like our sixth time doing this one. Again, I'm Cam, this is Julie, and we are in Exodus, not Genesis, Exodus of this week, and we are starting at 27:20, and we're going to 30, verse 10.
Woo! We got through it.
Yeah, all right. Seventh time's a charm.
Stay tuned after for all of our
see.
bloopers.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, last week we talked about the furniture that was inside the holy place and the Holy of Holies. This week we're talking about the garments that are required for the interaction with those items. All right. So the Lord, you remember, He's going to build that tabernacle for what? What's the whole purpose of this whole thing? So He can dwell with us.
Yes.
Well, in order for us to mingle with Him, we have to be in the state of mind and the physical appearance, physical proper attire. Yes.
I just want to say, not right now, but at the end, I want to share with something, just a little different perspective that I got on all of this today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. All right, so really, I want to begin this way. You know, when we read scripture, we're always like, how does it pertain to me? How does it pertain to me? And if you have watched our previous years, we tell how, as we've been called also to be kings and priests, that these are things, things that we should be aware of, wearing, how we guard our heart, how we guard what we carry on our shoulders, how we approach Him, okay? Mm-hmm. But there's another aspect to all these details, and that is the prophecy side. You know, we have to learn the end from the beginning.
I'm going to laugh if my little perspective is what you're about to talk about.
Well, if so, then you shut me down and you say yours.
No.
So, I was reading in Zechariah. Is that where you are? Zechariah?
Nope.
Okay. I was reading Zechariah, and suddenly I realized, wait a minute. We can't understand Zechariah if we don't understand these verses.
Ooh, okay.
Because in Zechariah, we have, let's see, so Zechariah, really chapter 3, and then Zechariah 6 talks about it. Those are the two main chunks that pertain or link up with this week.
To the priest's garments?
Yes,
okay.
Because these things that are in the future, okay, that are happening.
We see Aaron.
Yes, and
dirty.
at the time that, not Aaron, but Joshua.
Joshua, that's what I meant.
But when you see the prophecy, or Zechariah saw his prophecies, let's say it that way, is during the time that Ezra and Nehemiah were busy rebuilding the temple. Now, what is something that's going to happen in the end days?
Temple.
The building the temple.
Yay.
So these are things that not just point to what happened then or in the middle, but in the future, because once again, we're going to be building this. So in Zechariah, we have all these things pointing to. Here we have the Joshua, and he's in his robe, but it's dirty. Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't know what his robe is supposed to look like, you don't know what that means. What do you mean it's filthy? He's got some mud on it?
Right.
No. And he's being told, the guilt that he has, the Lord is taking away from him.
Right.
Then we have Zerubbabel, and he is being told he's the one that started to build it. He laid the foundation, and he's the one that's going to finish it.
Right.
Both of these are types of Messiah, but both of these are also roles that we're seeing right here in this week. The people brought their things, their goods, their gifts to Moses to build this.
Right.
That's what we had happening with Zechariah. We also have it in Ezra, and we have it in Nehemiah. Mm-hmm. In Ezra, I want to read this because it's really neat. Ezra 3:1 says, "Now, when the 7th new moon came," so that would be Tishri, okay, "the children of Israel were in the cities, and the people gathered as one man in Jerusalem."
Yeah.
So these are all 12 tribes from Judah, but all 12 tribes are in the kingdom of Judah. They've come back from Babylon, and they're gathered as one. Okay. This is so important because here we see them acting as one. And as they're acting as one, it's now allowing Zerubbabel to lay the foundation. Mm-hmm. It's now allowing Ezra to do the priestly aspect, and Joshua and Joshua's the high priest, and Zerubbabel is one of the priests, but they're working together, and there's this group. Even in reading Zechariah, you read and he talks about that these are the mighty men or the great men who are with them. Well, yeah, when you go back and read Ezra and Nehemiah, you see who they were. They were the ones who left Babylon came into the land, and now we're going to build. Same thing we have this week. These are the ones who left left Egypt, and have come in. Yes.
You got the priest and the high priest working together.
Yes.
So in the future, you've got Yeshua and us working together.
Absolutely.
And it says they're one man.
They're working as
Paul's one man, so we can see when that really will take place.
Yes. And it was there at the time when the second temple was built, okay? And it will be again when the third temple is built. Yeah. And if you go and read in Ezekiel 40 and on, you'll see that in Ezekiel 40. Right. And the specifics are given again in 1 Kings 6. And in Ezekiel, you've got specifics of what the temple looks like. And it has details just like we have here. But no changes on the garments of the high priest and the priest, because that stays the same. But the building from a tabernacle to a temple has some changes. The basic blueprints are the same, but there's some changes in the decor, I guess that's the way to put it. So as we mentioned, they were working as one. Well, you know, when you think about the breastplate and the shoulder pieces, they've got all the 12 tribes, right? But they're working as one. Right. And they're held together how? With those with the gold and the blue cord. And I wanted to talk about this. I know we've talked about it in the past, but I wanted to bring it up again. We have this blue cord, and it's in 28 is where we see the first blue cord. It's holding the shoulder garments and the breastplate part. It's holding those together. So there's a blue cord. The next blue cord is holding that plate on the head of the priest, the crown.
Right.
Now, there's a blue cord, but the actual word for that plate that says separated to the Lord is the word tzitzit. That's where we see it in Numbers 15. It's that same word.
Right.
And here's the blue cord aspect. So while we're called in the word to be kings and priests, right? We know Peter talks about that, and he's just quoting Torah. When we're called to be those things, he's given us a piece of it. Now let's talk real quick about that crown. When we think about a crown, we think about, you know,
a crown.
Gold with red, and jewels all over it, you know, for a king.
Right.
But you know in the word, there's no place that the king of Israel wears a crown?
Except Yeshua.
Well, yeah, but there's a reason. But hold on. Oh,
right.
Oh, good point, crown of thorn. Yeah, good point. Wasn't thinking that one. A really pretty crown.
Yeah.
So the kings didn't wear crowns. They wrote the Torah. That's what they had. That's what made him the king. Yeah, that was his crown, their ornament, which we know that in Proverbs. It talks all about how the Torah is that ornament around their neck. So they wrote the Torah. The priest was the one who had a crown. Messiah being both the king and priest, we know in Philippians 2, it talks about he's the name above all, that'll be upon him. That's because he's going to wear that as the high priest, okay? Tied on with the blue cord. Well, it said, one of the midrashes is that because the high priest wore that at all times when in service, but he didn't wear it when he went out. He took those garbs off because those clothes were meant to be inside the tabernacle, okay? But that he always, as if he had it on. And that sometimes in the day he would grab it or grab the cord and feel it to remind himself that he was set apart and what his job was. And I thought the tzitzit, isn't that what you take hold of it for what? To remind you that I have these commandments. I have this way of life in which you told me to live. But if we don't know the word, the front end of the book, it's hard to determine from the back end how that walk is really supposed to look. So I love that. And we look at these details again and we're like, well, so all the jewels and all the things like that. But each jewel is representing a part that makes the whole.
Yes. We
can't dismiss Israel because, again, on Messiah, the high priest in the heavenlies, heart and shoulders is Israel, every single name. Now, on the shoulder plates, there is not Ephraim and Manasseh. There is Levi, therefore there is Joseph.
Gotcha.
Right? And that's very important because through Joseph is where the two are made one.
Grafted in. Yes.
And again, those two made one and grafted in is what we're waiting for that to become one, right?
Right.
Just like Romans 11 talks about in the fullness of the Gentiles, then finally we can be one.
Right. Oh, you know, last night in Torah Kids, when we were going over this with the kids, we talked about how they were set in the gold. Each stone was set in the gold.
Oh, for the breastplate.
Yes, for the breastplate. And how gold represents eternal. So that just proves that all 12 tribes are eternal. you can't do away with 10. You can't do away with all of them. You can't do away with Israel because they all make up Israel, and they're set in gold. So it's a done deal.
Right.
Basically.
Right. It is eternal.
Right.
So much for replacement theology.
Right.
Out the window for that one. He's not going with the Baptist and the Catholic and the Presbyterian and the
It's the 12
whatever
tribes.
non-denominational. That's not who's there.
Yes.
It's the 12 tribes. So they haven't changed since the Lord set them up.
Yeah. Oh, and I can see how it's Israel no matter what, on earth or in heaven, in the heavenlies, because these are in stone. Stone is part of the earth.
Yeah.
And this is gold, and that's eternal.
Oh, yeah.
And it's over the heart of the high priest, which is Yeshua. So Israel is always close to his heart.
And the shoulder, that's where government's born like carried. So that makes sense on the earthly.
And Yeshua carried his part of the cross.
Right. Yeah.
Carrying
Which
the
was for
earthly
all
part.
12.
Yes.
Including us who are grafted in.
That's right.
So, oh yeah, that's good stuff. What?
Yeah, what?
So let's look at that engraving, chiseling part a little bit
Okay.
more. That's something else we see in Zechariah. He talks about there's the stone, and it's the stone with 7 eyes. Because that's the Lord looking to and fro. And I thought, yeah, of course, because those are the spirits, those are the eyes that go through that stone. Well, these stones, he's he's looking at us through Israel, because that's the way we have to come in.
Right.
So he's only going to see us through what's your relationship with him through his people.
It's interesting that you talk about those 7 eyes, and that's how he goes to and fro, right? Because I heard an interesting teaching, and I never thought about this. It was Rabbi Foreman, so I know y'all have heard it before, but still, and I'm sure I've listened to it before, but for some reason this year I was like, So he's like, is God everywhere?
Oh, mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes. Or is everything God? Yes. Wait, no. I don't know. And then when he explained it, I was like, oh, yeah. So he explains it like everything can't be God because then he's not kadosh. He's not holy.
Right.
So it says that he's holy, holy, holy. He is set apart.
Mm-hmm.
So everything, while it is to testify to his glory, he's not everything. Or else we could bow down to trees and it would be okay.
Right.
We could bow down to anything because it wouldn't matter because it's God.
Right. Those would all be his creations, but they're not him.
Right. So to have a Mishnah, to have the tabernacle was a big deal because then they could pinpoint, oh, here he is.
Right. Here's where we can connect.
Yes.
Yeah, and it is kind of sad when you think about, I know in our Christian mindset, we're like, oh, well, we don't need that anymore because we have Yeshua. Well, even Yeshua goes into the heavenlies, temple. And when he's here, he's going to rule from that area, from the temple.
And here's the interesting, you want me to go ahead and say the interesting thing?
Absolutely.
Because it goes right along with that. So I started thinking about the tabernacle, and then I thought, every time the Lord gives specific instructions and everyone has the epiphany, because it says that even to bring the priest's clothes, they had to be filled with the spirit of wisdom, right? So it seems to me, pattern's sake, that as soon as he's about to do this next big revelation in the bigger plan, he gives people the wisdom, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I started thinking about the Mishnah, and I started thinking, okay, so when you've got the tabernacle, when you're outside of it, you're in the world. Right. You're outside. You bring your sacrifice, and then but then the priest can go into the holy place. So I started thinking, oh my gosh, where did they just come out of? Egypt. What was Egypt so obsessed with? The afterlife. And they had their rendition of what the afterlife looked like. You pass through this and
like
have
in the
this
pyramid.
And yes,
all your
so you have
stuff
this rendition.
For the next life.
What if the Mishnah is a place for him to dwell with us, but it's also to give us an insight into what happens when we die?
I love it.
Because we're always like, we don't know what happens when we die. So you bring your sacrifice while you're in the world.
Right, yeah.
So it's that forgiveness. It's that repentant heart. But then once you die, you go through the curtains, because that was the cherubim.
Right.
Go through the curtain and you meet Yeshua, because all the furniture inside the holy place represents Yeshua.
Right.
He's the only one that can go to the Father. He's that mediator. Now, the cloud idea was like, that's us when we're in the world, because no matter where you were in the camp of Israel, you could see the cloud.
Right.
So Yeshua right now, he came at a time when the law and what was happening in the temple was so corrupt, right? So Yeshua is acting as that cloud between us and in him, and the Holy of Holies is where he dwells.
Right.
Right? So we know that. But also I thought, wouldn't that be interesting how he was giving this is what it looks like on a bigger scale when you pass from this life to the next. You meet the Messiah,
which we always say that that's representing the heavenlies. That's why there's no death in it.
Right.
So that's really a cool idea, because you're right. Our death isn't seen as death when we're in him. That's why in John, Messiah says he's the God of the living, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Right.
Because they're considered living, not dead.
Yes.
I like that a lot.
And I love the Mishnah.
What was in Egypt.
What countered what they just learned.
Right.
And the fact that it is mobile testifies to us because we're in the wilderness right now. When he gathers us all together, then we'll have the actual dwelling that we can see here on earth.
Last little thought. I heard Jim Staley say this several years ago. He did a thing on frequencies. And anyway, I was listening to a whole bunch of different people about frequencies of things in the world and how it works and blah, blah, blah. But the point is, he made a comment about the frequency of linen and wool were the same. They're both 5,000.
Oh, okay.
All right. So this morning when I was reading, I'm reading about, where he's got the woven, so it's considered to be wool around the waist, and he's got linen on everywhere else. And I thought, okay, so 5,000, as stated by Jim Staley, that it cancels out. Okay. So then it has like negative charges, because if you cancel out, then you don't have positive. So I thought, isn't it interesting? Because we are told in the Word, don't wear those two together.
Right.
Don't put them together.
Right.
Except for by the high priest.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started thinking, well, wouldn't it be interesting if the only place that those two cancel themselves out that doesn't create a negative is in the holy place, is where he's tending to the lamp, to the altar, to the bread, all these things on a daily basis, because he's the only one that has those two on.
Right.
And it kind of puts him at a zero, a completely empty vessel, to just allow the Lord to work through him. Yeah. I don't know. It was just a thought. I was like, huh.
You know what
so
it
they cancels out what?
Is light and darkness on day one. Separating the light from the dark. They're equally there, but you separate them, and then we're supposed to be the light, not the dark. So we can't wear both. But the high priest Yeshua took on both. He's light and dark, because that goes all the way back to the beginning, before there was the light and the dark.
I like it. Yeah.
I don't know. That's what when you said that, they have the same frequency. I was like,
And the wool, just on the side, the wool is from an animal.
Yes.
The linen is from a plant.
A plant?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So here you have the two aspects. I'm just going back to real quick, Adam and Eve.
Yes.
They cover themselves with a fig.
Yes.
Or whatever. They cover themselves with leaves, a material, plant-based. And the Lord's like, it just won't do.
Right.
You have to have the animal.
Something I created.
And then he covers them with the skin, something from an animal. And so here, I'll just put this out there. Realize that the garment of the high priest is sprinkled with blood. Mm-hmm. Only one time. Just like in Hebrews, when Messiah goes through, that initiation is one time. Right. Same thing for Aaron, one time. Yeah. Now, there's anointed with oil each time that's passed on. But if you think about the high priest, number 42, let me just make it up a number. Okay, number 42, still has the same garment that still has the blood of Moses, from Moses on it.
And the oil would represent generations.
Yeah.
Because the people, it's us that produce the oil and bring the oil. So each priest has to be anointed with oil. That makes sense, because you have to have all those generations. Yeah. But what was so cool that Paul discovered about Yeshua is he's like, we don't need, this system's fading away. The one here where we need the oil and all that. But you've got Yeshua, who's the eternal.
Right, but she doesn't mean that this is no longer
good. I just mean it's fading away, because you got to go generation to generation. There's always another high priest
just
to represent. But
that was clear that she didn't mean fading away like it's over, but fading away like there's death and then there's a new one that replaces.
Right, and that's why I used fading away, so to better explain that it doesn't mean it's done away with. It just means fading away because it has to be be renewed because it's earthly.
Hebrews 8 is what she's speaking of.
Yes.
Anyhow, there is a ton more, and I'm sure some of you are reading it going, blah, 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 blah. But there's so much, and I wish I'd gotten to talk about chapter 30, but that'll be Friday night for the group.
All right, and thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week, and we hope you have a fantastic week. Shalom! Hi, welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 137.
What's that?
Sorry.
I said Genesis. I mean, come on. Okay.
Sorry.
Snap.
Hi, welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 134.
I have the huge smile. This is like our third time. We just couldn't seem to get it together. So anyway, we are talking about Exodus.
That's Cam. I'm Julie.
Yes. Did I say that?
No.
I probably forgot that too.